Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something ancient, disciplined, and absolutely mentally exhausting. We're exploring why you wouldn't survive Marcus Aurelius' daily Stoic discipline. Not the feel-good, Instagram quote version of Stoicism you see today, but the brutal, unforgiving mental training of a Roman emperor who literally ruled the world while trying to feel nothing about it. Picture this. Waking up every morning at 4 a.m. to remind yourself that everyone you love will die, that your achievements mean nothing, and that you must face the day with perfect emotional control, while simultaneously making life or death decisions for millions of people. No therapy, no emotional support, no mental health days, just pure philosophical discipline that would break most modern minds in a week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. 4 a.m. the Roman palace is silent, except for the scratching of your pen on parchment. While the city sleeps, you're already preparing your mind for another day of ruling the world. But this isn't just any ruler. This is Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, and you're about to experience the most brutally disciplined morning routine in human history. No alarm clock jolts you awake. Your body has been trained through years of philosophical practice to rise before dawn. In the cold darkness of a Roman winter, when even the braziers have burned low and your breath forms clouds in the frigid air. You swing your feet onto the marble floor, and the cold shock shoots through your body like lightning. Good. This is intentional. Marcus doesn't reach for slippers or robes immediately. The cold is your first teacher of the day, reminding you that comfort is an illusion, that your body's desires mean nothing compared to your mind's discipline. You stand there, barefoot on marble that's colder than a morgue slab, and you breathe. Slowly. Deliberately. Each breath is a choice, each moment of discomfort accepted rather than resisted. The palace around you stretches in magnificent silence. Gold-leafed walls catch the flicker of oil lamps. Mosaics of gods and heroes stare down from vaulted ceilings, and somewhere in the distance, you can hear the faint sounds of servants beginning their day. But you're not thinking about luxury or power. You're thinking about death. Your death. The death of everyone you love. The eventual collapse of everything you're about to spend the next 16 hours trying to preserve. This is how Marcus Aurelius starts every single day. You make your way to your private study, a simple room compared to the opulent state chambers, furnished with just a desk, a chair, writing materials, and shelves lined with scrolls. The walls are bare except for a single bronze mirror, not for vanity, but for self-examination. You light an oil lamp and sit down at the desk where you keep your private journal, the one historians will later call meditations, but which you simply think of as your daily conversation with yourself. Your morning routine isn't about planning the day's imperial business. It's about preparing your soul for whatever horrors await. You dip your reed pen in ink and begin to write. But these aren't affirmations or gratitudes like modern self-help might suggest. These are reality checks, harsh reminders designed to strip away every comfortable illusion. When you wake up in the morning, you write. Tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. You're the most powerful man on earth, and you're starting your day by assuming everyone will disappoint you. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. By expecting betrayal, incompetence, and ingratitude, you're protecting your mind from the anger and frustration that destroyed lesser rulers. But that's just the warm-up. Next comes the death meditation. You close your eyes and picture your own funeral. Not in some distant theoretical future, but today. Right now. You imagine your body growing cold, your consciousness fading, your empire continuing without you. You think about how quickly you'll be forgotten, how your greatest triumphs will become footnotes, how the marble halls you're sitting in will crumble to dust. This isn't morbid thinking, it's liberation. If you're going to die anyway, if nothing you do will matter in 1,000 years, then you might as well do what's right without attachment to results. The ink flows as you record these thoughts. Very little is needed to make a happy life, you write. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Easy words to write, but you're about to spend the next 16 hours testing them. You'll make decisions that affect millions of lives, handle betrayals from trusted friends, receive news of military defeats and natural disasters, all while maintaining perfect emotional equilibrium. Your handwriting is steady, but inside, you can already feel the weight of what's coming. As the first hints of dawn begin to creep through the windows, you practice what Stoic philosophers call the view from above. You imagine yourself rising higher and higher above Rome, watching the city shrink below you, then the Italian peninsula, then the entire Mediterranean world. From this cosmic perspective, your problems look tiny. The senators who will try to manipulate you today are specks. The barbarian armies threatening your borders are insects. Even you, Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the known world, are just another brief flicker in an infinite universe. This exercise is supposed to bring peace, but often it just brings a different kind of terror, the crushing weight of cosmic insignificance. Your morning meditation isn't a gentle mindfulness practice. It's boot camp for your soul. You deliberately bring to mind everything that could go wrong today. Your wife Faustina could die in childbirth again. Your children could fall ill with the plague that's been ravaging your empire. Rebellious generals could march on Rome. Germanic tribes could break through your defenses and slaughter entire cities. You visualize each scenario in vivid detail, feel the initial shock and pain, then practice releasing it. By the time these thoughts cross your mind during the actual day, you've already processed them. You've already chosen your response, perfect stoic calm. The physical discomfort is getting to you. Your feet are numb from the cold floor, your back aches from the hard chair, and your stomach is empty. You won't eat until you've completed your morning exercises. But comfort would defeat the purpose. Marcus Aurelius isn't trying to feel good, he's trying to feel nothing. Or rather, he's trying to feel everything while being controlled by nothing. It's a crucial distinction. Stoicism doesn't numb you to pain, it teaches you to experience pain without being destroyed by it. You stand and move to the window, looking out over the 7 hills of Rome as the sun begins to rise. The city is waking up, smoke rising from cooking fires, the distant sounds of merchants setting up their stalls, the clip-clop of horses on stone streets. Somewhere out there, people are laughing, crying, arguing, falling in love, mourning their dead. You feel a strange disconnection from it all, as if you're watching life through thick glass. This is what 20 years of Stoic discipline has given you, the ability to rule without being ruled by your emotions. But it's also cost you something essential, the ability to simply feel without analyzing, to react without controlling, to be human without being philosophical about it. Your next exercise is even more challenging, contemplating the people you love while practicing emotional detachment. You think about your wife Faustina, beautiful and intelligent, but also rumored to be unfaithful. Traditional Roman masculinity would demand rage, revenge, jealousy. But Marcus the Stoic must love her without possessing her, care for her without controlling her, accept whatever she does without being destroyed by it. You think about your children, so many of them have died young, and each death was a test of your philosophical commitment. Can you love them fully while accepting that they might die tomorrow? Can you be a devoted father while remaining emotionally unattached to outcomes? The ink runs dry on your pen, but your thoughts continue flowing. You're writing about duty now, about how today's challenges are just training exercises for your character. You have power over your mind, not outside events you write when you refill the pen. Realize this, and you will find strength. But even as you write these words, you know how hard they are to live. Outside events have a way of overwhelming even the most disciplined mind. When the barbarians break through your borders, when plague decimates your legions, when trusted advisors betray you for gold, it takes superhuman effort to remember that you only control your response. The morning light is getting stronger now, and you can hear the sounds of the palace waking up. Soon servants will arrive with your simple breakfast, plain bread, water, maybe some fruit. You'll eat just enough to maintain your strength, treating food as fuel rather than pleasure. Then will come the ceremonial dressing, the morning audiences, the endless decisions that ruling an empire requires. But for now, in these last minutes of solitude, you practice the most difficult Stoic exercise of all, loving your fate. Amor fati. Love of fate. It's not enough to accept what happens to you, you must actually love it. Every setback is a chance to practice virtue. Every betrayal is an opportunity to practice forgiveness. Every loss is a lesson in impermanence. Every pain is a teacher of resilience. You're training yourself to be grateful for difficulties because they're the only things that can strengthen your character. It's a beautiful philosophy in theory, but in practice, it's almost inhuman. You're conditioning yourself to smile at your own suffering, to thank the universe for your tragedies, to find joy in your enemy's successes. The sun is fully up now, casting golden light across your desk and papers. Your morning meditation is nearly complete, but the hardest part is just beginning. Soon you'll have to leave this quiet sanctuary and enter the world of politics, war, and human drama while maintaining perfect philosophical composure. You'll sit in judgment of men's lives while remembering that justice is more important than mercy. You'll receive news of military casualties while practicing emotional detachment from outcomes. You'll make decisions affecting millions while keeping in mind that your own opinions might be wrong. You close your journal and prepare to face the day. But as you stand up from your desk, you feel the weight of what you've just done to your mind. You've spent an hour systematically destroying every natural human response to life. You've trained yourself to expect the worst, to detach from what you love, to find meaning in meaninglessness, and to smile at suffering. It's made you the most effective ruler in Roman history, but it's also made you something that's barely recognized as human. You've achieved perfect self-control by eliminating yourself. The morning routine is over, but its effects will last all day. Every emotion that arises will be immediately analyzed and controlled. Every natural impulse will be filtered through Stoic principles. Every human reaction will be suppressed in favor of philosophical ideals. You've prepared for your day the way a soldier prepares for battle, by hardening yourself against everything that might break you. But in the process, you've also hardened yourself against everything that might make you feel alive. As you walk toward your private bathing chamber to continue your morning discipline, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the bronze mirror on the wall. The face looking back at you is calm, composed, ready for anything. But behind your eyes there's something that wasn't there 20 years ago when you first began this practice, a kind of beautiful, terrible emptiness. You've won the war against your emotions, but sometimes victory feels a lot like death. The bathing chamber awaits, and with it, the next phase of your morning discipline. The Romans have perfected the art of bathing, but Marcus Aurelius has turned even this daily necessity into a philosophical exercise. The water is deliberately cold, not because hot water isn't available in the imperial palace, but because comfort weakens the soul. You've read the writings of earlier Stoic philosophers who recommended cold baths as a way to practice enduring discomfort. Today, like every day, you'll test your body's reactions against your mind's control. You remove your simple sleeping tunic, even your nightclothes are deliberately plain. made of rough linen rather than the silk that befits an emperor. The cold air hits your skin, and your body immediately wants to shiver, to seek warmth, to react with the basic animal instincts that have kept humans alive for millennia. But you don't shiver. You breathe slowly, deeply, and remind yourself that physical discomfort is neither good nor bad, it simply is. Your reaction to it is what matters. The cold water shocks your system as you lower yourself into the marble basin. Every nerve screams in protest, your muscles contract involuntarily, and your breathing wants to become rapid and shallow. This is exactly what you're training for. Not the cold itself, but your ability to remain calm while experiencing something your body desperately wants to escape. You count your breaths 1, 2, 3, keeping them slow and deliberate, while the cold water feels like liquid ice against your skin. This isn't masochism, though it might look like it to a modern observer. This is what Stoics call training under difficulties. You're deliberately seeking out manageable forms of discomfort, so that when real suffering comes, and it will come because you're the Emperor of Rome and suffering is guaranteed, you'll be prepared. Every moment in this cold water is practice for receiving news of military defeats, handling political betrayals, or watching your children die of plague. As you wash yourself with simple olive oil soap, you practice another Stoic exercise, examining your body without attachment. You look at your arms, your chest, your legs, and remind yourself that this flesh is temporary. These hands that sign death warrants and peace treaties are just arrangements of bone and muscle that will someday decay. This brain that rules an empire is just meat that will rot. This perspective isn't meant to be depressing, it's meant to be liberating. If your body is temporary, then physical pain loses its power over you. You think about the scars you carry, not many, because emperors rarely see actual combat, but a few from training and accidents. Each mark on your skin is a reminder of impermanence, of the body's fragility, of how quickly everything can change. You trace a small scar on your forearm from a childhood fall, and remember how much it hurt at the time, how important it seemed. Now it's just a faded line, meaningless except as a lesson in how perspective changes with time. The water is getting colder as you stay in it longer. Your servants know better than to add hot water. They've learned that the emperor prefers his baths to be ordeals rather than pleasures. You can feel your body temperature dropping, your fingers starting to lose sensation, your muscles growing stiff. But your mind remains focused and calm. This is the goal, to create a separation between what your body experiences and what your mind allows to disturb your peace. You begin reciting passages from Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic teachers. Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. Here you are, the wealthiest man in the world, practicing poverty of desire, while sitting in a marble bathing chamber. The irony isn't lost on you, but irony is just another external circumstance to be accepted without emotional reaction. As you continue your cold bath, you practice what will become one of your most famous philosophical exercises, the discipline of desire. You deliberately think about things you want: a warm bath, a comfortable bed, a day without imperial responsibilities, and then practice not wanting them. It's not enough to simply not have these things, you must train yourself not to desire them. This is perhaps the most unnatural thing a human can do, to systematically eliminate wanting from your mind. The servants outside the door are probably wondering why you're taking so long. They have schedules to keep, appointments to arrange, an empire to run. But they've learned not to interrupt the emperor's morning disciplines. They know that this time spent in cold water, in deliberate discomfort, in philosophical practice, somehow makes their master better at ruling. They don't understand why, but they've seen the results: an emperor who never loses his temper, who faces crises with supernatural calm, who makes difficult decisions without being paralyzed by emotion. You think about your predecessor, Antoninus Pius, who adopted you and prepared you for rule. He was a good emperor, steady and competent, but he ruled with natural instincts rather than philosophical discipline. When problems arose, he felt worry. When enemies threatened, he felt anger. When friends betrayed him, he felt hurt. These seem like normal human responses, but Marcus Aurelius has trained himself beyond normal humanity. Your reactions are filtered through philosophy, processed by reason, controlled by will. The cold is becoming almost unbearable now. Your body is begging you to get out, to seek warmth, to end this self-imposed torture. But you stay a few minutes longer, practicing the most essential Stoic skill, the ability to choose your response to circumstances rather than being controlled by them. Every second in this cold water is a small victory over the tyranny of physical sensation, a tiny step toward the perfect emotional equilibrium that Stoic philosophy promises. When you finally step out of the bath, your skin is blue-white and numb. Your movements are stiff and clumsy, but your mind is sharp and focused. You've proven to yourself once again that you can endure discomfort without being broken by it. This lesson will serve you well today when you receive reports of barbarian raids, when senators try to manipulate you, when the weight of imperial responsibility threatens to crush your spirit. You dry yourself with a rough linen towel, no soft Egyptian cotton for the emperor-philosopher. Even this simple act becomes a meditation on simplicity, on finding contentment with the basic necessities rather than luxury. The towel scratches your skin, but scratching is just another sensation to be observed without judgment. You're training yourself to experience everything, pleasure and pain, comfort and discomfort, with the same detached awareness. As you prepare to dress for the day, you practice another morning exercise, contemplating the clothes you'll wear as symbols rather than mere garments. The purple striped toga that marks your imperial rank, the golden laurel crown that sits heavy on your head during ceremonies, the ornate jewelry that signals your power. All of these are just costumes for a role you're playing. Underneath, you're just Marcus, a human being trying to live according to reason and virtue. You think about the weight of the imperial regalia, how it literally and figuratively burdens whoever wears it. Previous emperors were crushed by this weight, driven mad by power, corrupted by luxury. But Stoic discipline is supposed to make you immune to these dangers. By practicing emotional detachment, by remembering the impermanence of all things, by focusing on virtue rather than pleasure, you should be able to wear power like a loose garment, ready to discard it at any moment. But even as you think these thoughts, you can feel the subtle corruption of power working on your mind. It's almost impossible to make life and death decisions for millions of people without beginning to feel God like yourself. The Stoic exercises are meant to counter this tendency, but sometimes you wonder if they're enough. Sometimes, in quiet moments like this, you feel the immense loneliness of your position, isolated by power, separated by philosophy, alone at the top of the world's greatest empire. The morning light is now streaming through the windows, painting everything in gold. Soon you'll have to emerge from this private sanctuary and enter the public world of emperorship. But first you complete your morning discipline with one final exercise, practicing gratitude for difficulties. You deliberately think about the problems awaiting you today, the Germanic tribes pressing your borders, the plague devastating your cities, the senators plotting against your policies, and you force yourself to feel grateful for them. This gratitude isn't natural or easy. Every human instinct rebels against being thankful for suffering. But Stoic philosophy teaches that difficulties are gifts because they provide opportunities to practice virtue. Without challenges, you couldn't develop courage. Without injustice, you couldn't practice righteousness. Without loss, you couldn't learn acceptance. Your enemies are actually your teachers, your problems are your training equipment, your suffering is your strength-building exercise. As you finish your morning preparations, you feel the strange dual nature of Stoic discipline settling over you like armor. On one hand, you're more prepared than any human has ever been to face whatever the day might bring. You've systematically eliminated the emotional reactions that paralyze other leaders. You've trained yourself to remain calm in chaos wise in confusion, just in anger. You're as close to a perfect ruler as philosophy can create. But on the other hand, you've paid a price that you're only beginning to understand. Somewhere in the process of achieving emotional mastery, you've lost something essentially human. You can love without attachment, but can you love deeply? You can face loss without despair, but can you feel joy without reservation? You can rule without corruption, but can you live without isolation? These questions will haunt you throughout the day, even as you perform your imperial duties with superhuman competence. The morning discipline is complete. You've prepared your mind for rulership, your emotions for control, your body for endurance. In a few minutes, you'll walk out of this private chamber and become Marcus Aurelius Caesar, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, judge of nations. But for now, in these last moments of solitude, you're just a man who has trained himself almost out of humanity in pursuit of philosophical perfection. The day ahead will test whether that trade was worth it. But morning meditation is just the warm-up. Now comes the real test, the advanced spiritual exercises that would drive most people to madness within a week. As you dress in your simple white tunic, the purple toga can wait until the formal audiences begin. You prepare for the most challenging part of your daily routine. These aren't gentle mindfulness practices or peaceful contemplations. These are extreme mental gymnastics designed to reshape your very understanding of reality, to tear down every natural human response and rebuild them according to Stoic principles. You return to your study, but this time you don't sit at the desk. Instead, you stand before a large map of the known world painted on the wall. The Roman Empire in all its glory, stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. But you're not here to admire your domain. You're here to practice what Stoic philosophers have called a cosmic perspective, and it's about to make everything you think you know about importance seem ridiculous. You close your eyes and begin the exercise that has become as routine as breathing, yet never gets easier. You imagine yourself rising above Rome, higher and higher, until the city becomes a dot, then disappears entirely. You see Italy shrinking to a peninsula, then the Mediterranean becoming a small lake, then the entire Earth becoming a marble hanging in space. But you don't stop there. You continue rising until Earth disappears, until the Sun becomes just another star, until our solar system is lost among billions of others. From this imagined vantage point in the cosmic void, you look back at your life. The empire you rule covers less space than a single atom compared to the universe. The wars you're fighting, the laws you're writing, the buildings you're constructing, all of it is happening on a speck of dust floating in infinite darkness. Your entire civilization, all of human history, every person who has ever lived or will live, exists in a space so small it might as well not exist at all. This perspective is supposed to bring peace by showing you how insignificant your problems really are. But the effect is often more terrifying than comforting. You're not just small, you're nothing. Less than nothing. Your empire, your family, your thoughts, your very existence, all of it is a brief flicker in an eternity of darkness. The weight of cosmic insignificance presses down on you like a physical force, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to remember why anything matters at all. Yet this is exactly what Marcus Aurelius practices every single day. This crushing awareness of meaninglessness is supposed to liberate you from petty concerns, from ego, from the illusion that your actions have lasting importance. If nothing you do matters on a cosmic scale, then you're free to act purely from virtue rather than from attachment to results. It's a beautiful theory that feels like spiritual suicide in practice. You open your eyes and force yourself to look at the map again. Those borders you'll spend today defending, those cities you'll spend resources protecting, those people whose lives depend on your decisions, from the cosmic perspective, they're all equally meaningless. This knowledge is supposed to make you a better ruler by freeing you from personal investment in outcomes. But sometimes it makes you feel like you're governing a dollhouse, making decisions for imaginary people in an imaginary world. Next comes an even more challenging exercise, deliberate contemplation of your own death, not as a distant possibility, but as an immediate reality. You sit in your chair and imagine that this is your last day alive. The servants who will knock on your door in an hour will find your body cold and still. The empire will continue without you. The sun will rise tomorrow on a world where Marcus Aurelius never existed. You practice this death meditation not once, but multiple times throughout your morning routine, approaching it from different angles each time. First, you imagine dying suddenly, a heart attack, an assassination, a riding accident. You visualize the moment of transition from consciousness to void, the final breath, the last thought fading to black. Your body tenses involuntarily as your mind rebels against imagining its own extinction, but you force yourself to continue. This isn't morbid thinking. It's preparation for the one certainty in life. Then you imagine dying slowly, from the plague that's ravaging your empire, from a wasting disease, from the gradual failure of age. You picture yourself growing weaker day by day, your body betraying you, your mind perhaps failing before your flesh. You imagine the pain, the indignity, the slow loss of everything you've worked to build. Most people avoid these thoughts, but Marcus Aurelius dwells on them deliberately, training his mind to accept the unacceptable. But the exercise doesn't stop with your own death. You systematically contemplate the deaths of everyone you love. Your wife Faustina, brilliant and beautiful, reduced to bones and dust. Your children, the ones still living and the ones already lost, all ending in the same darkness. Your closest advisors, your loyal servants, your trusted generals, all of them temporary arrangements of flesh that will decompose and be forgotten. This isn't sadism or depression. This is what Stoics call negative visualization, deliberately imagining loss, so that you can appreciate what you have while you have it, and so that you won't be destroyed when loss inevitably comes. By thinking about your wife's death every morning, you're supposed to love her more deeply while she lives, without the desperate attachment that causes suffering when she dies. The mental strain is enormous. Your head begins to throb from the concentration required to hold these terrible images in your mind without flinching, without pushing them away, without seeking comfort in denial. You can feel tension building in your neck and shoulders as your body reacts to the psychological stress of repeatedly confronting mortality. But you continue anyway, because this is what separates a Stoic sage from ordinary humans, the ability to stare directly into the abyss without blinking. Next comes the exercise that breaks most people who attempt it, practicing emotional death while still alive. You systematically go through every feeling that makes life worth living and train yourself not to feel them. Joy at your children's accomplishments. You practice experiencing their success with calm approval rather than pride or happiness. Anger at your enemies' attacks. You train yourself to see their hostility as just another weather pattern, neither good nor bad in itself. Love for your family. This is the hardest one. You practice caring for them, protecting them, providing for them, all while maintaining emotional distance from the outcomes. If they thrive, good. If they suffer, that's also acceptable. If they die, you'll mourn appropriately but briefly, then return to your duties. You're training yourself to love without attachment, to care without clinging, to invest in relationships while accepting their impermanence. The philosophical logic is sound. If you're not attached to specific outcomes, you can't be crushed when those outcomes don't match your desires. If you don't need your children to succeed in order for you to be happy, then you can guide them wisely without the desperate helicopter parenting that often sabotages what it's trying to protect. If you don't need your wife to be faithful in order for you to feel secure, then you can love her freely without the jealousy that poisons so many marriages. But the human cost is staggering. You're systematically training yourself out of the emotions that make life meaningful. You're becoming a perfectly rational being in a universe that often requires irrationality, the irrationality of hope when evidence suggests despair, the irrationality of love when loss is guaranteed, the irrationality of joy when suffering is inevitable. As you practice these exercises, you can feel something dying inside you, not in a dramatic way, but slowly, quietly, like a fire burning lower, until only embers remain. You're achieving the Stoic ideal of emotional equilibrium, but you're beginning to wonder if equilibrium is another word for emptiness. You can handle any crisis with supernatural calm, but you're not sure you remember how to celebrate a victory with genuine happiness. The morning light is getting stronger now, and somewhere in the palace, life is beginning its daily rhythm. Servants are preparing meals, scribes are organizing documents, guards are changing shifts. Normal people living normal emotional lives, getting excited about small pleasures, getting upset about minor inconveniences, feeling the full range of human experience without philosophical filter. You envy them sometimes, these people who can cry at funerals without analyzing their grief, who can laugh at jokes without questioning whether humor is virtuous, who can love their children with ashi, without worrying about attachment. They'll never achieve the perfect self-control that makes you an effective emperor, but they'll also never lose the essential humanness that makes life worth living. The next exercise is perhaps the most unnatural of all, practicing gratitude for your enemies and their attacks. You think about the Germanic tribes currently pressing your borders, trying to kill your soldiers and destroy your cities. Traditional thinking would label them as evil, as obstacles to be overcome, as sources of legitimate anger and fear. But Stoic philosophy demands that you see them as teachers, as opportunities to practice virtue, as gifts from the universe. Without external challenges, how would you develop courage? Without injustice to fight, how would you practice righteousness? Without suffering to endure, how would you build strength? Your enemies aren't trying to destroy you, they're trying to perfect you. Every attack is a test, every setback is a lesson, every loss is a chance to practice acceptance. You must not only accept this intellectually but feel grateful for it emotionally. You spend long minutes trying to generate genuine thankfulness for the barbarians who killed Roman citizens yesterday, for the plague that's decimating your population, for the senators who oppose your policies out of self-interest rather than principle. It's like trying to feel grateful for being stabbed, like thanking someone for poisoning your food. Every human instinct rebels against this exercise, but you persist because this is what separates philosophical discipline from ordinary coping mechanisms. The headache is getting worse now. The sustained mental effort required to maintain these unnatural thought patterns is physically exhausting. Your temples throb, your vision occasionally blurs, and you feel a deep fatigue that has nothing to do with lack of sleep. This is the cost of trying to live like a god while trapped in human flesh, the constant strain of fighting your own nature, of imposing rational order on emotional chaos, of maintaining perfect control in a world designed to destroy control. But you're not done yet. The final morning exercise is the most ambitious, trying to achieve what Stoics call the view from nowhere, a perspective so detached from personal interest that you can see reality as it truly is, without the distortions of desire, fear, hope, or aversion. You imagine yourself as a completely neutral observer of your own life, watching Marcus Aurelius as if you were a character in a play, feeling no more personal investment in his success or failure than you would in the outcome of a chess game between strangers. From this perspective, your imperial duties become simply roles to be performed competently without emotional investment. Your family relationships become social contracts to be honored without attachment. Your own death becomes just another event in the natural order, no more significant than the changing of seasons or the movement of stars. You're trying to achieve what philosophers call perfect objectivity, but what often feels more like perfect numbness. The exercise is supposed to culminate in a state of profound peace, a liberation from the tyranny of personal desires and fears. Sometimes it works. For brief moments, you achieve a kind of crystalline clarity where everything makes sense, where you see the cosmic order underlying apparent chaos, where you feel connected to the rational principle that governs the universe. But more often, it just leaves you feeling hollow, disconnected from your own life, watching yourself rule an empire, as if you were viewing it through thick glass. As the morning exercises draw to a close, you realize that you've spent nearly 2 hours systematically dismantling every natural human response to existence. You've practiced dying, practiced not caring, practiced being grateful for suffering, practiced viewing yourself and everyone you love as temporary arrangements of matter. You've achieved a level of emotional control that would be impossible without this daily psychological conditioning. But you've also moved further away from anything recognizable as normal human experience. The servants are stirring outside your door now, preparing for the formal beginning of your imperial day. Soon you'll have to put on the purple toga, the golden crown, the ceremonial symbols of power that mark you as Caesar. You'll have to make decisions that affect millions of lives while maintaining perfect Stoic composure, remembering that your choices matter and don't matter simultaneously, caring about outcomes while being detached from them. Your morning spiritual exercises are complete, but their effects will last all day. Every emotion that arises will be immediately processed through this philosophical filter. Every natural human response will be analyzed, controlled, and often suppressed. You've prepared your mind for rulership by training it almost out of humanity. The question that haunts you as you prepare to face the day is whether you've created the perfect emperor or destroyed the essential man. The purple toga feels heavier than usual as your servants drape it across your shoulders. The gold threads woven into the fabric catch the morning light, announcing to everyone who sees you that this is Caesar, master of the known world. But beneath the imperial regalia, you carry the weight of something far heavier than cloth and metal, the terrible responsibility of making life and death decisions for millions of people, while maintaining perfect Stoic detachment from the outcomes. Your first audience of the day brings news that would shatter most rulers. 3 legions have been decimated by Germanic tribes along the Danube frontier. 20,000 Roman soldiers dead, their bodies feeding carrion birds, while barbarian warriors celebrate around captured eagles. The messenger, a dust-covered centurion who rode hard for 5 days to bring this report, watches your face carefully for a reaction. He's expecting rage, grief, perhaps fear. Instead, he sees the calm mask of Stoic discipline. "How many survived?" you ask, your voice steady as marble. The centurion reports the numbers: wounded, missing, scattered. You nod and thank him for his service, recommending him for promotion and rest. Inside, your morning exercises are already working. You've practiced this exact scenario in your mind: massive military losses, imperial prestige damaged, Roman citizens slaughtered. You visualized your response months ago, years ago. When the actual moment arrives, it feels almost like déjà vu. But maintaining this superhuman calm requires enormous energy. As you dismiss the messenger and turn to your advisors to discuss reinforcements, you can feel the strain building behind your eyes. Your head throbs from the effort of suppressing every natural emotional response. A normal ruler might shout, weep, or rage. You simply note that setbacks are opportunities to practice virtue, that the dead soldiers are returning to the cosmic order from which they came, that anger serves no practical purpose in military planning. Your advisors, hardened politicians and generals, watch you with a mixture of awe and unease. They've learned to trust your supernatural composure in crisis, but sometimes they wonder if their emperor feels anything at all. One general suggests immediate retaliation, his voice tight with barely controlled fury at the barbarian success. Another recommends defensive positioning to prevent further losses. They debate strategy while watching your face for guidance, but your expression reveals nothing. We will respond according to justice and practical necessity. You finally say, not from anger or wounded pride. The words come from Stoic philosophy, but they land in the room like cold stones. Your advisors nod and begin planning the response, but you notice the way they glance at each other when they think you're not looking. They're wondering if their emperor has become more machine than man. The morning progresses with a steady stream of imperial business, each decision requiring you to balance human emotion against philosophical principle. A group of senators requests an audience to discuss grain subsidies for the poor. Their leader, Lucius Verus, argues passionately about starving families in the city's slums. His voice rises as he describes children with swollen bellies and desperate mothers selling themselves for bread. A normal ruler might be moved by such descriptions, might feel the urgency of human suffering and act from compassion. But Marcus Aurelius processes this information through the filter of Stoic logic. Emotions like pity and outrage are judgments about external circumstances, and external circumstances are neither inherently good nor bad. The suffering exists, yes, but your response to it must be guided by reason rather than feeling. You approve the grain subsidies, but your decision feels mechanical rather than compassionate. You calculate resources, consider political stability, evaluate long-term consequences. The human element, actual hungry children, actual desperate families, becomes abstract, reduced to numbers in your philosophical equation. The senators leave satisfied with your decision, but puzzled by your manner. They got what they wanted, but they're not sure their emperor cared about why they wanted it. By midday, the weight of emotional suppression is becoming physically painful. Your jaw aches from maintaining a neutral expression during conversations about death and suffering. Your shoulders are rigid with tension from holding your body in perfect imperial posture, while your mind processes trauma after trauma without allowing natural reactions. The Stoic discipline that makes you an effective ruler is slowly crushing the life out of the man wearing the crown. A messenger arrives with personal news that tests your philosophical training to its limits. Your youngest son, barely 3 years old, has developed a fever and is calling for his father. The palace physicians are uncertain whether it's a minor illness or the early stages of the plague that's been devastating the empire. Your wife Faustina sent word that you should come immediately if you want to see the child conscious. Every paternal instinct screams at you to run to your son's bedside, to hold him, to feel the fear and love that any normal father would experience. But Marcus Aurelius the Stoic knows that emotional attachment to outcomes, even the outcome of your child's life, is a form of slavery. You've spent this morning practicing acceptance of loss, including the loss of your children. Now that practice is being tested in the most brutal way possible. You excuse yourself from the morning audiences and walk slowly, not running, because running would indicate emotional disturbance, toward the family quarters of the palace. With each step, you practice the morning's lessons. Your son is a temporary arrangement of atoms that will return to the cosmic order whether he lives or dies. Your love for him must be rational rather than emotional. You must care for him while accepting that caring cannot control outcomes. But as you approach his chamber, you hear his weak voice calling Papa, and something cracks in your philosophical armor. The sound hits you like a physical blow, and for a moment, the carefully constructed walls of Stoic discipline threaten to crumble. You stop in the hallway, breathing carefully, forcing yourself back into emotional control before entering the room where your wife waits with tear-streaked cheeks. When you finally enter, your son's fever-bright eyes light up at seeing you. He reaches out small arms, and you take him carefully, feeling his burning skin through his nightclothes. Faustina watches your face desperately, looking for some sign of the human emotion she married, some crack in the imperial mask that's replaced her husband's natural expressions. But you've trained too well. Even holding your dying child, you maintain perfect composure. The physicians, you ask quietly. Faustina explains their uncertainty, their treatments, their guarded prognosis. You nod, ask practical questions about care and comfort, make arrangements for the best doctors in the empire to attend him. But you don't weep. You don't rage against the injustice. You don't bargain with gods or blame enemies. You accept what is while working to change what can be changed, exactly as Stoic philosophy teaches. Your son falls asleep in your arms, and you hold him for a long time, practicing the most difficult exercise of all, loving without attachment, caring without clinging, protecting while accepting that protection has limits. To outside observers, you might look like the perfect father, calm, strong, reliable in crisis. But inside, you're systematically dismantling every natural emotional response that makes parenthood meaningful. When you finally return to your imperial duties, leaving Faustina to tend your son, you carry the weight of another successful philosophical test. You've proven that even the threat of losing a child cannot disturb your Stoic equilibrium. But the victory feels hollow, purchased with the sacrifice of something essentially human that you're no longer sure you can retrieve. The afternoon brings more tests of your discipline. A group of Christian prisoners is brought before you for judgment, followers of a religion that directly challenges imperial authority by claiming loyalty to a higher king. Traditional Roman justice would demand their execution as traitors, but you must decide according to Stoic principles of justice and reason rather than political expedience or religious prejudice. You listen to their testimony with the same detached attention you give to all matters of state. They speak of their God with passionate conviction, willing to die for their beliefs rather than compromise them. In another context, you might admire such philosophical commitment. But as emperor, you must consider the practical consequences of allowing open defiance of Roman law and tradition. The decision you reach satisfies neither traditional Romans nor Christian sympathizers. Exile rather than execution, a punishment that upholds imperial authority without unnecessary bloodshed. It's a perfectly rational choice that leaves everyone slightly dissatisfied, which you've learned is often the mark of good governance. But as you pronounce the sentence, you wonder if your famous mercy stems from philosophical wisdom or from emotional numbness that makes all outcomes equally acceptable. The day's final test comes as sunset approaches, and you receive reports from the frontier. The plague you've been fighting for years has reached a new province, decimating entire cities and spreading panic among the population. Local governors are requesting emergency aid, military reinforcement, and most of all, imperial presence to reassure terrified citizens that their emperor hasn't abandoned them. A normal ruler might feel overwhelmed by the scope of the crisis, the impossible demands being made on limited resources, the knowledge that thousands will die no matter what decisions are made. But Marcus Aurelius processes this information with the same calm analysis he applies to everything else. The plague is a natural phenomenon, neither good nor evil in itself. Death comes to all people eventually. Your duty is to respond rationally to circumstances beyond your control while accepting outcomes you cannot change. As you prepare your response to the crisis, dictating orders to scribes and coordinating with generals, you realize that you've achieved something remarkable, the ability to face any catastrophe with perfect equanimity. You've become the ideal Stoic ruler, capable of making difficult decisions without being paralyzed by emotion, of accepting loss without despair, of maintaining order while chaos rages around you. But as the day ends and you prepare for your evening philosophical review, you're haunted by a question that no amount of Stoic training can answer. In becoming the perfect emperor, have you stopped being a human being? You've gained the whole world but lost something essential, the ability to feel deeply, to react naturally, to experience the messy, irrational emotions that make life worth living. You've achieved philosophical perfection at the cost of emotional death, and you're beginning to wonder if the trade was worth it. Evening arrives, and with it comes the most dangerous time of day for someone who has spent 20 years suppressing every natural human emotion. As the sun sets over Rome, painting the marble columns of your private study in blood-red light, you sit alone with your journal to conduct what Stoics call the evening review, a daily examination of every thought, word, and action to identify failures in philosophical discipline. But tonight, like so many nights before, the real examination reveals something far more troubling than momentary lapses in virtue. You dip your pen in ink and begin to write, but the words that emerge aren't the usual philosophical reflections. Instead, you find yourself documenting a growing awareness that something fundamental has broken inside you. Today I ordered the execution of 3 conspirators without feeling anger at their betrayal, you write. I received news of my son's fever without experiencing fear. I listened to reports of plague deaths without knowing grief. I have achieved perfect emotional control, but I fear I may have lost my soul in the process. The isolation is perhaps the worst part. You're surrounded by hundreds of people every day, senators, generals, servants, family members, but you haven't had a genuine emotional connection with another human being in years. Your Stoic discipline creates an invisible barrier between you and everyone else, a philosophical glass wall that lets them see you but prevents them from truly reaching you. You can observe their emotions, analyze their motivations, respond to their needs, but you can't simply be present with them in the way that friendship and love require. Your wife Faustina sits in the next room, probably crying over your son's illness, desperately needing her husband to share her fear and grief. But Marcus Aurelius the Stoic cannot give her what she needs because sharing emotions would compromise his philosophical discipline. You've trained yourself so thoroughly to suppress feeling that you're no longer capable of the emotional intimacy that makes marriage meaningful. You love her in the abstract, as a fellow rational being deserving of care and respect, but you can't love her in the immediate, irrational, vulnerable way that she loved when she married you. Your children have learned not to come to you for comfort when they're upset, because they know they'll receive only philosophical lectures about the necessity of accepting what cannot be changed. They've learned that their father is more like a wise statue than a warm human being, impressive, reliable, but cold to the touch. You provide for them, protect them, educate them, but you can't give them what children need most, a parent who feels deeply about their joys and sorrows. The servants whisper about you when they think you can't hear. They call you the marble emperor because your face shows no more expression than the statues in the palace gardens. They respect your fairness and competence, but they're slightly afraid of your inhuman composure. Normal people instinctively trust leaders who show appropriate emotions, anger at injustice, joy at success, sorrow at loss. But your perfect emotional control makes you seem alien, as if you're not quite human anymore. As you continue writing in your journal, your hand begins to shake slightly, not from any physical ailment, but from the enormous psychological strain of maintaining impossible standards of philosophical perfection. Every day you monitor every thought for signs of emotional disturbance. You catch yourself before you can feel anger, interrupt yourself before you can experience joy, suppress yourself before you can know grief. The constant self-surveillance is exhausting beyond description. I have become a stranger to myself, you write. I watch my own life as if observing another person's story, making decisions without personal investment, ruling an empire without feeling connected to it. I have achieved the Stoic ideal of perfect rationality, but rationality without emotion is not wisdom. It's death disguised as life. The headaches have become constant now, a dull throb behind your eyes that never completely goes away. Your physicians can find nothing wrong, but you know the cause, the unnatural mental effort required to live in constant opposition to your own nature. Human beings are emotional creatures, and trying to function without emotions is like trying to breathe without lungs. You can manage it for short periods through tremendous effort, but eventually the strain becomes unbearable. You think about the person you were before you began this philosophical journey, passionate, impulsive, capable of deep joy and profound sorrow. That man would have wept openly at the death of friends, would have roared with laughter at clever jokes, would have felt genuine excitement at military victories and crushing disappointment at defeats. He was flawed, yes, but he was alive in a way that you no longer remember how to be. The Stoic exercises that once seemed like tools for improvement now feel like instruments of self-torture. The morning death meditations that were supposed to prepare you for loss have instead numbed you to the value of life. The cosmic perspective exercises that were meant to free you from petty concerns have left you feeling disconnected from everything that makes existence meaningful. The emotional detachment practices that were designed to prevent suffering have prevented you from experiencing the full range of human experience. You set down your pen and walk to the window, looking out over the city you rule but no longer feel connected to. Somewhere out there, ordinary people are living ordinary emotional lives, laughing with friends, crying over losses, getting angry at unfairness, celebrating small victories. They experience the full spectrum of human feeling, and while this makes them less effective than you at handling crisis, it also makes them more alive than you'll ever be again. The realization hits you like a physical blow. You've achieved everything you set out to achieve through Stoic discipline. You've become the perfect ruler, capable of making rational decisions under any circumstances, immune to the emotional chaos that destroys lesser leaders. But the price has been your humanity itself. You've traded your capacity for genuine feeling for perfect self-control, and now you're not sure which version of yourself was more valuable, the flawed human or the perfected philosophy machine. Your son's fever breaks that night, and he recovers fully within a week. The news should bring overwhelming relief and joy, but you receive it with the same calm acceptance you would show for any other report. Faustina weeps with gratitude. Your other children dance with happiness. The servants smile and whisper prayers of thanks. But you simply note the favourable outcome and return to your imperial duties, feeling nothing but a distant intellectual satisfaction that the crisis has resolved efficiently. This moment crystallizes everything wrong with your philosophical achievement. You've trained yourself so thoroughly to accept loss that you can no longer truly appreciate preservation. You've become so prepared for death that you can't fully celebrate life. Your emotional equilibrium is so perfect that it's become a kind of living death, where everything feels equally distant and meaningless. The evening review reveals the full scope of what you've lost. You can remember feeling deeply about things, but you can't remember how it felt to feel. You know intellectually that you love your family, but you can't access the emotional reality of that love. You understand that Rome's victories should bring satisfaction and defeats should bring disappointment, but all outcomes seem equally acceptable to your philosophical detachment. You've achieved the Stoic ideal of perfect apatheia, freedom from destructive emotions. But you've discovered that emotions aren't just sources of suffering. They're also sources of meaning, connection, motivation, and joy. By eliminating the capacity for emotional pain, you've also eliminated the capacity for emotional pleasure. By becoming immune to disappointment, you've also become immune to genuine satisfaction. As you prepare for bed, you practice one final evening exercise, examining your philosophical progress with ruthless honesty. By every measure that Stoic philosophy provides, you've succeeded beyond what most practitioners ever achieve. You've attained perfect emotional control, cosmic perspective, acceptance of fate, and detachment from outcomes. You're living proof that the Stoic system works exactly as advertised. But you're also living proof that success in philosophy might not be the same thing as success in life. You've become the ideal Stoic sage, but you've lost something essential in the process, the messy, irrational, vulnerable humanity that makes existence worth experiencing. You've gained perfect wisdom and lost the capacity for wonder. You've achieved perfect virtue and lost the ability to sin spontaneously. You've mastered perfect discipline and forgotten how to be beautifully, chaotically, imperfectly human. The question that haunts you as you close your journal and prepare for sleep is whether there's any way back from philosophical perfection to human authenticity. You've spent 20 years building walls against emotion, and now you're not sure whether those walls protect you or imprison you. You've become Marcus Aurelius the Great, the philosopher emperor, the perfect Stoic ruler. But somewhere in that achievement, you've lost Marcus the man, the husband, the father, the human being who once felt deeply about things that mattered. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to practice virtue, new tests of your philosophical discipline, and you'll handle them all with superhuman competence and inhuman detachment, ruling the world while feeling disconnected from it, making perfect decisions while wondering if perfection is just another word for emptiness. March 17th, 180 AD, the Germanic frontier near modern-day Vienna. You're dying in a military tent, far from the marble palaces of Rome, far from the libraries where you first discovered Stoic philosophy, far from everything that made your life meaningful, except the discipline that has both sustained and destroyed you. The irony is perfect. Marcus Aurelius, who spent decades preparing for death through daily meditation, is finally meeting the reality he practiced imagining every morning for 20 years. The plague that has ravaged your empire for so long has finally claimed you as its victim. Your body burns with fever, your breathing comes in laboured gasps, and the physicians who attend you wear the careful expressions of men who know they're watching an emperor die. But even now, even as your flesh fails and your consciousness wavers, you maintain the Stoic discipline that has defined your reign. You observe your own dying with the same detached interest you once brought to military reports and Senate debates. Death smiles at us all, you whisper to your son Commodus, who sits beside your deathbed with tears streaming down his face, but all a man can do is smile back. The words come from your philosophical training, but they land in the tent like stones dropping into deep water. Your son, barely 19 and completely unprepared for the weight of empire, looks at you with desperate hope that his father might finally show some normal human emotion, fear, sadness, regret, anything that would make this moment feel real rather than like another philosophical exercise. But you can't give him what he needs. Even dying, you're trapped within the perfect emotional control you've spent a lifetime building. You love Commodus, you know this intellectually, but you can't feel that love in any way that might comfort him. Your philosophical discipline, which was supposed to prepare you for this moment, has instead isolated you from the human connection that makes death meaningful rather than merely biological. As your strength fades, you think about the great project that has consumed your life, the attempt to rule the world's greatest empire according to the principles of Stoic philosophy. By any rational measure, you've succeeded beyond what anyone could have expected. You've brought peace to vast territories, administered justice fairly across diverse populations, and maintained Roman power while treating enemies with unprecedented mercy. You've proven that a philosopher can be an effective emperor, that reason can guide politics, that virtue can coexist with power. But success tastes like ashes in your mouth as you lie dying, because the other half of your great experiment, the personal cost of living according to perfect Stoic discipline, has been a catastrophic failure of human flourishing. You've become the ideal sage at the expense of everything that makes life worth living. You've gained the whole world and lost your soul, exactly as religious teachers warn, but in ways they never imagine. The tent flap stirs in the evening breeze, and through the opening you can see Roman soldiers going about their evening duties. They know their emperor is dying, but life continues anyway. Men sharpening weapons, tending horses, sharing meals and jokes around campfires. Their casual humanity feels alien to you now, like observing a species you once belonged to but can no longer remember how to join. They feel things simply and directly. Anger at enemies, affection for comrades, homesickness for distant families. You envy them their emotional authenticity, even as you know your philosophical training makes you a more effective leader than any of them could ever be. Your thoughts turn to the private journal you've kept throughout your reign, the collection of notes and reflections that historians will later publish as meditations. Those writings were never meant for public consumption. They were your daily practice of Stoic discipline, your way of training your mind to accept whatever fate might bring. But as you lie dying, you realize they may be your only lasting legacy, the only evidence that Marcus Aurelius the man ever existed beneath Marcus Aurelius the emperor. Very little is needed to make a happy life, you wrote years ago. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The words mock you now. You've achieved perfect control over your way of thinking, but happiness has remained as elusive as morning mist. You've learned to want nothing, to expect nothing, to hope for nothing, and in doing so you've discovered that a life without desire is also a life without joy. Commodus leans closer, asking if there's anything you need, any final words of wisdom for the son who will inherit your impossible burden. You want to tell him to be human first and emperor second, to feel deeply even when it hurts, to choose authentic emotion over philosophical perfection. You want to warn him that Stoic discipline, taken to its logical extreme, can become a kind of spiritual suicide that leaves you perfectly rational and completely dead inside. But the words that come out of your mouth are the same philosophical platitudes you've been reciting for decades. Remember that you are an actor in a play, which is as the author wants it to be. Even in your final moments, you can't break free from the intellectual prison you've built around yourself. Your son nods respectfully, but you see the disappointment in his eyes. He was hoping for a father's love, not a philosophy lesson. As the night deepens and your breathing becomes more laboured, you practice one final Stoic exercise, accepting your own death with perfect equanimity. You've imagined this moment thousands of times in your morning meditations, visualizing the transition from consciousness to void, from existence to non-existence. Now that the reality has arrived, it should feel familiar, manageable, perhaps even welcome. Instead, it feels like the ultimate test of a discipline that has already cost you everything worth having. You're dying alone, even surrounded by people who love you, because your philosophical training has made genuine emotional connection impossible. You've spent your life preparing for this moment by systematically destroying your capacity to feel deeply about anything, including your own mortality. The tent grows quiet, except for the sound of your failing breath and the distant murmur of soldiers outside. Your advisors and physicians wait respectfully for the end, but you sense their relief that this strange, emotionally distant emperor will soon be replaced by someone more recognizably human. They've served you faithfully, but they've never understood you, never felt the warmth of genuine affection from their philosophical master. Your mind wanders to the Germanic tribes you've spent these final years fighting. They live short, brutal lives driven by passion, loyalty and fierce emotion. They feel love and hate, joy and sorrow, hope and despair with an intensity you've trained yourself never to experience. In your Stoic worldview, they're inferior beings, slaves to their emotions, lacking the rational discipline that elevates humans above mere animals. But as you die, you wonder if they might be more alive than you've ever been. Their defeats devastate them, but their victories bring genuine celebration. Their losses crush them, but their loves sustain them. They live fully in each moment rather than observing life from the detached perspective of cosmic insignificance. They're everything your philosophy has taught you not to be, and in your final moments, you're not sure who has chosen the better path. The ultimate irony reveals itself as consciousness fades. Marcus Aurelius, who spent his life mastering the art of not caring about outcomes, dies caring desperately about the one outcome he can no longer influence, whether his philosophical experiment has been worth the human cost it demanded. You've achieved immortality through your writings, influence through your example, and perfection through your discipline, but you've lost the one thing that makes any achievement meaningful: the capacity to feel deeply about what you've accomplished. Your final thought before the darkness takes you is a question that 20 years of Stoic discipline cannot answer. In becoming the perfect philosopher emperor, have you created a model for others to follow, or a cautionary tale about the dangers of taking any philosophy too far? You've proven that human beings can transcend their emotional nature through systematic training. but you've also proven that such transcendence might be indistinguishable from spiritual death. As dawn breaks over the Germanic frontier, Marcus Aurelius breathes his last breath, still maintaining perfect Stoic composure even in death. The soldiers outside begin the day with their usual routines, unaware that the most disciplined man in human history has just discovered the final limitation of discipline. It can prepare you for anything except the possibility that preparation itself might be the problem. Your legacy will live on in the pages of philosophy books and the policies of future emperors. But the man who created that legacy, the human being who sacrificed his emotional life for philosophical perfection, dies as he lived in his final years, alone, rational, and perfectly, tragically controlled. The experiment is complete, and history will judge whether the results justified the sacrifice you made of your own humanity. In the days following your death, something remarkable happens. Your private journal, those intimate conversations with yourself written during cold morning hours in the palace, is discovered and preserved. The meditations, as they come to be known, reveal a different Marcus Aurelius than history expected. Not the superhuman emperor-philosopher, but a struggling human being wrestling with doubt, loneliness, and the weight of impossible expectations. I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men you had written, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. These words reveal the truth you could never speak aloud during your lifetime. Even the most disciplined Stoic struggles with self-doubt, with the gap between philosophical ideals and human reality. The pages of your journal show a man fighting against his own nature, trying to convince himself that emotional detachment is wisdom, rather than a form of living death. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbour says or does, you wrote, not realizing that you were describing not philosophical superiority but profound isolation. Future generations will read your words and find in them not a manual for perfect emotional control, but a cautionary tale about the dangers of taking any philosophy too far. They'll see the man behind the emperor, the human beneath the sage, the father who loved his children but couldn't show it, the husband who cared for his wife but couldn't express it. Your son Commodus, inheriting the empire at 19, will prove the ultimate failure of your philosophical project. Without your superhuman discipline to guide him, without the emotional connections you trained yourself not to feel, he'll descend into the very madness and corruption that Stoic philosophy was meant to prevent. The empire you ruled with perfect rational control will crumble under his impulsive emotional chaos. Perhaps this is the final lesson of your life, that humans need their emotions, their imperfections, their messy irrationality. Without the capacity for deep feeling, we lose not just the ability to suffer, but also the ability to truly connect, to love, to find meaning in our brief existence. Your philosophical perfection created the ideal emperor, but destroyed the essential man. The Germanic tribes you spent your final years fighting will eventually overrun the borders you died defending. The plague that killed you will continue ravaging the empire for decades. The political stability you maintained through pure force will collapse within a generation of your death. All the things you sacrificed your humanity to protect will prove as temporary as you always knew they were. But something else will survive. The example of a human being who pushed the boundaries of what discipline and self-control can achieve. Not as a model to be perfectly copied, but as a case study in both the power and the limits of philosophical training. You showed the world what total emotional mastery looks like, and in doing so, revealed why complete emotional mastery might not be worth achieving. The question remains, echoing through the centuries, can we learn from Marcus Aurelius how to live with wisdom and virtue, or must we learn from him how to avoid the trap of philosophical perfection that destroys the very thing it seeks to perfect? A human life worth living. Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing between emotional chaos and rational control, but in finding a middle path, We can learn from your discipline without copying your isolation. We can appreciate your wisdom without adopting your detachment. We can admire your strength without sacrificing our humanity on the altar of philosophical perfection. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep in your comfortable bed, with central heating and indoor plumbing, with therapy available when you need it, and loved ones you can call when you're lonely, remember Marcus Aurelius lying in that cold military tent. Remember the man who gained the whole world but lost his ability to feel joy at gaining it, who achieved perfect self-control but forgot how to simply be himself. You don't need to wake up at 4 a.m. to contemplate death. You don't need to train yourself not to feel. You don't need to view your problems from cosmic distances that make everything seem meaningless. You can practice wisdom without practicing emotional suicide. You can develop discipline without destroying your capacity for spontaneous happiness. Take what serves you from the Stoic tradition, the focus on what you can control, the acceptance of what you cannot change, the cultivation of virtue and wisdom. But leave behind the inhuman extremes that turned Marcus Aurelius into a perfect emperor and a profoundly lonely man. As the philosopher emperor learned too late, life is meant to be felt as well as understood, experienced as well as analyzed, lived as well as contemplated. The goal isn't to become a marble statue of virtue, but to remain beautifully, messily, authentically human, while striving to be the best version of yourself you can become. So sleep well tonight, knowing that your emotions, even the difficult ones, are not obstacles to overcome, but essential parts of what makes you gloriously, imperfectly, completely human. Dream of a world where wisdom and feeling can coexist, where discipline serves life rather than replacing it, where you can rule your own small kingdom with both strength and warmth. Sweet dreams, and remember, you are more than your thoughts, more than your control, more than your discipline. You are a human being, and that is enough.